Welcome, Wargamers, to the totally safe, nothing to worry about here corners of the mortal realm, because today we are talking about Dawnbringer's Book 5, Shadow of the Crone, and this is video 4 of its coverage. In my last video, we talked about Thorian's crusade reaching very much near the final stretch of their journey. They reached the safety of a city called Nathwaite's Crossing, which was built on the Thoril River. It's kind of a dam kind of architecture with a city that's kind of built into the side to defend said dam. And while everyone was resting and recovering, Thorian decided, I don't want to lose momentum, and so after looking at updated maps, selects a spot for her next City of Sigmar, takes her military arm to go out and clear it. But she leaves in doing so a detachment of her crusade back at town to, like I said, resupply, re-equip, all that kind of stuff. And while the locals have been friendly, they aren't really too eager to hang out with the Dawners. People stay locked up in their homes, they don't talk to strangers, and very quickly madness descends upon this little township while Thorian is away. And that's really going to be the crux of today's story. We're going to conclude the Ghiran side of the crusade, what happened back at Nathwaite's Crossing, and how does the founding of the next City of Sigmar actually go. One thing I'd like to add up top here, if you're interested in this video and any hobby supplies or Warhammer content, please consider using one of the affiliate links in my link tree down below. There you'll see a whole bunch of stores from all different countries and exactly how much money you'll save when you use those links, and every time you do, it throws a tip in my tip jar to me, my wife, our cats, the channel, all of it, and I'm so thankful for each and every one of you because you keep these videos ad-free. And if you need to get caught up on the story, I have a playlist down below for all the Dawnbringer stuff. Start at the number 1 video and work your way forward. I also want to throw a shout out here for Goonhammer, because as we stare down the barrel of 4th edition coming out, Goonhammer is going to have a whole bunch of resources and articles to get you up to date, keep you in the loop as to what changes are going down. But let's neither dilly nor dally here, friends. As we hinted at in my last video, there is clearly some kind of corrupting force that poisons the waters of Ghiran. And I think between whatever's happening here and Nurgle just generally liking Ghiran a lot, don't drink the water there. Just don't. Can we all agree, if you go to Ghiran somehow, don't drink the water? But the things that, these effects are having begin very subtly. People go missing. The locals of Nathwaite's Crossing and the Cities of Sigmar forces that are a part of the Crusade start to realize that they're losing folks. Sure, initially some are chalked up to either desertion or maybe a miscount on the part of the census, trying to corral all the troops together. Maybe they're just missing a few folks. But when one soldier kills 2 comrades and gouges the eyes out of his officer, things become very apparent. There's something wrong at Nathwaite's Crossing. Now, at one point, the leader of the Crusade forces in the town, the guy who Thorian left in charge of this little section here, his name is Sub-Marshal Vandis. Or Van Dice. And he's going around trying to investigate what's happening to his men, what's going on at Nathwaite's Crossing, and at one point, as he's very despondent over all these weird rash of violent attacks is going on, he goes to his tent, and he is greeted by a Lumineth Realm Lord hiding in the shadow. He doesn't want to be seen, he doesn't want to be a dignitary or a representative, he wants to meet the leader one-on-one in secret. This elf claims to be of the Temple of Indrasil, the river elves that we recently talked about in the Warcry set. And to Sub-Marshal Van Dice, he basically explains everything that's going on. The river here, the Voral River, is tainted and corrupted. Your host, Evander Nathwaite, who the founder lineage of the town, is corrupted and is in service to a dark patron. And the Indrasil, Lumineth is essentially saying he's bringing information of these folks were in the middle of expanding the Voral Dam, and Nathwaite kept declining the aid that Van Dice was offering. They're stuck in the town, the least we could do is send a few guys to help you, and the elf explains the reason he keeps saying no is because they're not really building a dam, dude. It's a channel. Remember, these are the river elves, they're going up and down the major thoroughfares of the realms, and what he is seeing, and then trying to basically articulate to our human commander here, is the plans of these guys here in this town is not to stop the river with a dam, but to channel it downstream specifically to where Thorian wants to plant her new City of Sigmar and eventually further into Ghiran. Whatever's happening here, he wants to happen everywhere. And so Vertiges grabs his best men, at least the ones that he thinks, have been corrupted the least, or they at least seem the most sane, and he makes for the dam, basically saying, okay, I don't know anything about what this Lumineth is saying. He ducked out really quickly. Let's go see the dam, right? Like, if it's what he's saying is true, it should be pretty obvious that this is not functioning as a dam. They make their way there, and they're greeted by Nathwaite, again, that leader of the city who's all corrupted, and he basically confirms this. And his argument is, you injured the Summer King. It's his blood from the wounds you caused that is running down this river. Who would dare shoot the Summer King? And of course, all those things are true, right? We know from the previous book that the cities of Sigmar were kind of like manipulated into firing upon Usherin. It's his blood from that wound that is pouring into the Thorol River. And so there's this weird kind of like martyr complex that they have, like, oh my gosh, his blood's running in the river. You made him bleed. You have to be stopped. And Nathwaite attacks. And the scene here, just to kind of back out for a little bit, is really awesome. It's on the side of the dam. So there's a man-made lake on one side, which now Vertiges can see is full of dead bodies and gore, likely all of his missing people, just like the same corrupting type of ritual we saw back in Hammerhall Akshi in the same book. On the other side is a river being, gradually directed. They're trying to point it towards a different stream that will go forth and poison Thorian's new city. During the battle, Vertiges is knocked all over the edge, and only to be saved once again by a figure who swoops in low and plucks him right before he falls into the gore pool, which is the second time this exact same scene has happened in this book, and it's none other than the same Shadow Crone, Crethusa. She snags Sub-Marshal Vertiges and flies for hours all the way out to Thorian's location. And in doing so, she essentially just ditches all of the Cities of Sigmar units and supplies, takes the one person who Thorian would trust as a witness to her. And presumably here, the Cities of Sigmar units that were left in that town are destroyed. But our camera kind of pans and now settles firmly on Thorian, who's chatting with Crethusa, with Vertiges there to confirm the treachery that happened at the dam. Now, this was the most, MacGuffin-y of all the things ever. Like, I didn't see a reason why Crethusa had to be the one to join, like, to swoop in and do the literal copy-paste of the Callus and Toll scene where she saves the day of a guy falling into a flesh-eater court pit of gore. But, whatever, we got here. Thorian knows what's up, and she sets out immediately. Crethusa is there saying, we're going to be there to aid you. I have forces nearby. We'll attack at the same time. We have to shut this, corruption down because, of course, like we mentioned before with the Daughters of Cain and whatever the motivations of the new Crone Herald are, they have a vested interest in making sure cities aren't ruined. They live there too, so it's like, I get it. And all of these events lead up, after like a day or two, to an epic event known as the Battle of Vorax Dam. As Thorian's forces crest a mountain along the cliffside overlooking the dam, they see the extent of their enemy, and this is probably one of the best perspectives we get of just how rotten things have gotten, where you have like waves upon waves of flesh-eater courts scrabbling towards them, just in like literal human waves. There's corpses all over the place. The water coming out of the channel now, because it's not really a dam, is like fetid and all nasty. And at this point, we have the Cities of Sigmar and some Cainite allies that Crethusa brought with her, hacking and slashing into these. Now, the scene is really cool because the Witch Elves go through these ghouls with ease. Like, honestly, it's probably the most accurate game-to-story imagining ever of just Witch Elves going straight through a pack of ghouls, while the Cities of Sigmar units kind of formed a defensive perimeter and just pointed all of their cannons that they could at the channel, the dam, the structure, whatever you want to call it. And while they were all fighting well, there's just not enough of the forces of order because the flesh-eater courts continue to pour out across the river, crawling up from different surfaces, out of walls. And now, all of a sudden, there's a big shriek and a gore warden is circling the sky. It's this character, Sire Grimlock, that was directing Nathwaite and his town from the shadows. Remember we talked about with the Callus and Toll story, it seems like the king's blood or whatever corrupting presence is in the water will start to change people, and then a nearby ghoul king or some, actual vampire type thing of the flesh-eater courts will sense that there are people nearby, come in and take control. And at this point, Sire Grimlock, he's got his boy Nathwaite on the dam, Everything's looking awesome. He thinks, I have this. We're going to wipe out the last of these city forces, get back to corrupting the river. The City of Sigmar cannons are struggling to chew through this dam, and the tide of ghouls is endless. So again, he's looking at this like, I've got this on lock. He flies up high to take kind of a full view of the battlefield and just kind of revel in his own mastery of the whole thing. But this was a very arrogant mistake to make, because Shadow Crone Crethusa flies at him and attacks. And they have their own like Dragon Ball Z boss fight across the battle below. Or up above it, I mean. It's pretty cool. They go back and forth. You don't see a whole lot of flying enemies and attackers in AOS. And in the end, Crethusa shoots her feather darts out and clips him in the eye, the heart, and the throat. And he falls dead from the sky. So even though our forces of good guys are outnumbered, they just sniped out the Flesh Eater Court hero. All those nobility points are gone. He falls dead. Evander Nathwaite, Lord of Nathwaite's Crossing at this point, saw his lord fall in battle, and as he watched him fall, his vision blurred and distorted. The delusion had weakened, at least for him. Now, we talked about this before. When people are affected by the Flesh Eater Court's kind of like delusion, sometimes their vision will flicker. They'll see what's really happening, and it'll kind of be interspersed with what the delusion is. Looking at this dead horror, where moments ago he saw a majestic knight, he realized in a flash at least some aspect of what had happened. He is now standing on the dam as an army of cannibal madmen under his command surge to kill his allies, and he has himself one of those like, pause, how did we get here kind of moments. He's looking around at all these little maniacs, and he sees a cart of explosives at the far end of the bridge, or this dam construct. They use these demo charges when building the dam into the cliff edge, and in a fit of final devotion to Sigmar, now that his mind has been cleared at least momentarily, he throws his torch at the cart. Now, Thorian and the rest of the city's armies don't actually necessarily see this happening. This is just for our benefit. All they see is that one moment her cannons are doing almost nothing against this dam, and the next the whole thing erupts into fire and steam and water. The waters flow freely, the man-made lake is drenched essentially pretty much instantly, and they're no longer being redirected towards her people or anyone else downstream. In doing so, the Flesh Eater Court forces, at least the bulk of the army, is washed away. I mean, like, they're literally crossing the dam to get to the city's guys, and they get pushed downriver. For the rest of them, they're just dumbfounded because their leadership is gone. Like, not just the Gore Warden, but now Nathwaite, all of it. And it falls apart from there. And this is realistically where the scene goes black. Thorian, now confident in the founding of her new city, names it Vertiges. Thus concludes the narrative section of the Shadow of the Crone campaign book. Now let's take a step back and ask, as we always do in these videos, why is this cool? There's a few things in this particular part of the story that I liked. First of all, the Lumineth Realm Lords guy, which found out later, is that he really just wanted a distraction. He assumed he was going to go talk to the leader of the Cities of Sigmar forces, and he was going to get ticked. No matter what the Lumineth guy said, he was going to go investigate, and they were going to cause a bunch of trouble. What they don't know is that somewhere up or downstream, the Idrillin Lumineth are already working hard to purify the river. Because no part of this story has anything to do with actually stopping the source of the corruption, just so that it doesn't affect the rest of the cities. The idea for the city of Vertiges is awesome. Like, the idea that's built into this three-way turquoise mountain range where it has lots of mineral riches, built-in defenses, sites of already arcane power. They have their own rum gate. Like, it just seems perfect. And what I think this story does a great job of doing, just like the story we had with Callus and Toll of seeing what mass infection of Flesh Eater Court stuff looks like, this does a great job of that, but less for a massive city and more for a small township. Like, Hammerhall has, the distinction of having extra units that can go into the waterway and find what's going on, whereas, all of this town is so small. They don't have any underground catacombs. It's all just in your face. So more depictions of that, I think, is always good. The battles here were clear and decisive. A new city was founded, and I am filled with all kinds of joy because I just like Uran. I like the artwork that comes out of there. Thorian's Crusade has consistently been my favorite. One of the things that we get, though, from the founding of this new city is that they are not stoked about Crethusa, the Shadow Crone. But they cannot deny that it would have been a defeat without her intervention. And so my sense that I get from this is, I wonder if this means Crethusa is looking to found her Temple of Cain in the new city. Basically, like, we're going to establish a new Daughters of Cain temple that is fundamentally different than any other ones because we don't worship Morathi, and also, quite frankly, they are just generally nicer than a lot of the other Daughters of Cain factions are depicted as being. Crethusa seems to help a lot more. But it would make, her actions would make a lot of sense if there was kind of a selfish ulterior motive of, we need a city that will take us in and no questions asked. I will say, stepping back from the book as a whole, I really expected to learn more about the Crone order, as they describe it, of like this series of Daughters of Cain that kind of splintered off from the rest. As is, I feel like they're simply saying, yeah, well, we don't all like Morathi, but are there any plans to do anything about that? Or sub-factions or anything, or, just ways of articulating that more than Edgelord Winggirl is kind of out there. It's ambiguous. So I just wish there was a little bit more meat on the bone. It seems like a fantastic character to lead that kind of thing. And I'm very intrigued by the premise. I just didn't feel like it was very well developed in this book, even though it has Shadow of the Crone on the cover. It's also important to remember that as they're kind of factoring in who could be allies and who could live here, maybe Crethusa is trying to get a spot in the city, that the city is not safe. Like, they made it there, but in doing so, like locally by scouting, they've already found Maggotkin of Nurgle, Cruel Boys are out there, and more. The church is hard at work purifying the area of Slaanesh and laying the cornerstones of this bastion, but it's far from secure. And if you're curious as to what the initial founding of a city looked like, the book Dominion by Darius Hinks actually has a fantastic breakdown of how they found a city with, the metaliths. They unload stuff, use them as natural fortifications. There's a priority of creating concentric circles of defense, first against ethereal things, then against physical threats. It's really cool. But friends, that is going to do it for the Shadow of the Crone. Another book where I didn't feel like the story moved terribly much, but I will say, yet again, the Gioran side to me is much more interesting. Thorian getting pulled in so many different directions of like trying to be proactive, leaving her troops to go out and secure the area, being weighed against, there's no safe places in the mortal realms. You can't just leave half your crusade somewhere and expect things to go well. All of those make for fantastic things to cover, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about them. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will hang out with you there. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you next time. Happy wargaming, friends.